For the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to be using the Frosty editor, GIMP for processing textures, Ultimate Unwrap 3D, and Maya LT for processing models. So after you have Frosty installed, you're going to be met with the Select Configuration window, where you want to click New and find the executable file for your game. So for me, it's located under C Program Files Origin Games Star Wars Battlefront 2. Double click that, and then you want to load the configuration. In this tutorial, I'm going to export the Phase 2 Clone Trooper and the DC-15 rifle. So this is where the Clone Trooper parts are located, and that's the Phase 2 helmet. Right there. And that's the armor. You can see the hands are missing, they are located elsewhere. They are in the body parts folder. And these are the gloves the clone troopers use. So let's export those with the correct skeleton, which for humanoid characters will be this one, Voros human male, in most cases. Make sure to export in centimeters, and yeah. So now for the textures, I'm gonna export the normal texture and the color. I prefer using the TGA format for textures. Anyhow, this is where the DC-15, the full long rifle, is located. And we're going to export that too. I export the weapons without any kind of a skeleton, they are just going to be static meshes. So I'm gonna grab the correct textures for the rifle, and that finishes the part of exporting. Now that the exporting is done, comes the processing in Maya. So for the import settings, make sure to have the file type in FBX, use the correct namespace settings, like so, and have it on Add and Update Animation. Let's import the body. So what you want to do now is to enable the outliner, so press space in the viewport, and in the upper region, left click and toggle outliner. Right, so what you want to do now is delete the LOD groups so that you have the most detailed mesh available, and using Shift P to detach from the group. So what you want to do next is search for procedural and rename the procedural bones that are attached to this skeleton. So now that all the bones are renamed, you can just go ahead and export. And make sure to export with smoothing groups and tangents and binormals enabled. And you can have animation ticked as well, but it's not necessary. I just like to have it left on so I don't accidentally skip exporting animations when I have them. So now you basically do the same for the helmet. You import the helmet, you delete the LODs, you ungroup the mesh itself and delete the group, then you search for the procedural bones and rename those with an accurate name that represents which skeleton they are attached to. Right, so let's just export it. And it's basically the same drill with the hand itself. Delete the LODs, ungroup, delete the group, search for procedurals, no procedural bones, and you can export it. Right, so now that we have all of that processed and exported, let's assemble the mesh itself. So let's import the body. And a quick note that you should do is you import the model, and then on the left in the outliner, you rename the object m_body or anything that's basically a mesh, and give it a unique name. So give it a suffix like m_body 01 or something like that, because sometimes you can run into issues when importing. But anyhow, you can see that due to the settings we have in the import menu, the clone trooper is now fully assembled and it's on one skeleton, so this is one model now, practically speaking. So now you just want to export this to have it as a fully assembled character. So what you want to do is import the now assembled clone to Ultimate Unwrap 3D Pro and scale it up by 100 and untick the Merge Similar Materials option. So what you want to do is just export it and make sure to have these options ticked on. Right. So now in Maya, let's import the now rescaled Clone Trooper model. And as you can see, it's going to be a lot bigger. Yeah. So what you want to do here is delete the helper bones associated with the meshes in the model, so that you only have the skeleton and the meshes themselves. So what you want to do now is rename the materials on these meshes so that you can easily assign textures and you don't need to guess that which material goes where. So instead of a generic name like Fong3, m_clone helmet phase 2, so that I know that it's the phase 2 clone trooper helmet material. All you want to do is just name it final and export that. Now with the correct materials and scale, and you can just drag and drop this into your Unreal Engine 4 folder or Unreal Engine 4 project. So make sure to have import normals and tangents enabled with preserve smoothing groups also enabled. So now you have the model inside Unreal Engine 4. So now comes the part of processing the textures. What you see on the screen right now is the suffixes the textures have in, for instance, Battlefront 2 and most Frostbite games, and these suffixes tell you the information that is stored in the textures. So, for instance, CS, as you can see on the top of the list, means color smoothness, which means that the first three channels, the red, green and blue channels of the texture, will contain the color information, and the alpha channel will contain the smoothness information in the texture. So, what you want to do is open up GIMP, and I'm going to show you how the CS texture is basically structured. So in terms of normal maps, most of the time what you want to do is split them in two. So what you want to do is go into colors, components, decompose into an RGBA color mode, and you're gonna get 4 layers. Then compose these into a normal texture and an everything else texture. So the normal texture has the blue and the alpha channels masked to a 255 value, which gives you this. You can export this as your normal texture. So this is going to be the normal of the body. So basically the reason why we need to split the texture into two, one containing the red and green channels and one containing the blue and the alpha, is because I'm going to show you that. And what you want to do the other way around is to mask the red and green channels into a 0 value, leaving the blue and alpha in, and export this as your metallic texture. So the reason why we need to do this is because Unreal Engine 4 compresses normal maps in a way that basically deletes any bits of information from the blue and alpha channels, so we can't use those when we're making our materials. So now that we have these split, you can just drag and drop these into Unreal Engine 4. So what you want to do is open your metallic texture and set the compression mode to masks. Now open up your material . Drag your textures in and plug them in the correct inputs. So the blue channel of the metallic goes in metallic, the RGB of the base color goes in base color, and the alpha of the base color goes into a 1- node and then into roughness. So this is how you translate smoothness to roughness. You basically invert it. Right. So if you have done everything correctly, then now the clone body will have its shader created, as you can see here. Now another thing you need to do is Unreal Engine 4 and Frostbite deals with normal maps differently, so you need to flip the green channel of the normal in Unreal Engine 4. So basically then the steps are the same for every other texture. You split the normal in two and name this split normal accordingly. So you can see here that I'm putting the gloves together, setting the AOSL texture to masks and flipping the green channel of the normal so that the shading will be proper, right? Inverting the smoothness so we get the roughness of the texture, and plugging in the normal. Now, since you can see that the AOSL has a different suffix, the blue channel actually contains the ambient occlusion information. So pay attention to your suffixes when you're working with these textures. And as you can see, now the gloves are set up properly as well. Gonna decrease the intensity of these lights. So now that we have done that, we are going to process the DC15. So what you want to do is ungroup the mesh, delete the group, and right click when you have the mesh selected, go into face mode and move the trigger back into its correct slot. There we go. So now what you want to do is go into your channel box and scale it up by 100 so it gets the proper scale. Then right click and freeze the scale of the model. So there we go, that's the properly scaled DC15. So what you want to do is assign a material to the weapon and name it something recognizable, the same way we did with the clone armor. And you want to make sure that the UV sets are intact on the model, because sometimes the export can go a bit wonky and you need to re-export it, so it's best to make sure that your weapon UVs are intact. So let's import this into Unreal Engine 4 with import normals and tangents enabled. There we go. And basically do the same thing with the textures that you did with the Clone Trooper textures. So now that you have the normal map split, import that. Set the metallic texture to a mask and flip the green channel of the normal map. Now open up the DC15 material, bring in your textures, and plug the textures into their correct slots. Once again, inverting the smoothness, plugging that into the roughness, plug the metallic into the metallic and the normal into the normal, and save that. So what you're going to see is that the textures don't fit the weapon. You can see that it's practically all wrong. This is because of what I've shown you. The weapon uses two UV sets, UV channel 0 for the normal map and UV channel 1 for everything else. So the metallic, smoothness and color texture all use UV channel 1 and the normal uses UV channel 0. So what you want to do is right click there and bring in a texture coordinate node, plug that into the UVs of the metallic and CS texture, and change the coordinate index on the top to 1. So now the textures are told to use the second UV channel. And that's basically it. That's how you port from Frostbite to Unreal. I suggest studying the suffixes of the textures so that you can speed up the process, but this is the gist of it. Alright, so thanks for watching. I hope this little explanation will help you in your future endeavors, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.